Well, this is such a diverse topic, but maybe the point of it will be the fact that working with parents is a skill equal to, and many times much harder than really informed dynamic treatment of children. It's why people get in a lot of arguments about how people should be trained. If they're going to be child analysts or child therapists, how much adult work do they need to know? And probably a fair amount, because you will not get very far with children if you don't understand parents and honor their difficulties and needs and make a relationship with them. Once, a long time ago, I was taught that you split the cases. One person would see the child, and then somebody of lesser training could see the parents. That was a joke. It never worked, really. I mean, we sort of saw the children, and we sort of learned how to do therapy, at least to play checkers with the child, but we never knew where they came from. We'd meet with the other person who saw the parents, who would give us a report on what they complained about at home and what advice he or she had given them, but you never became the auxiliary ego for a parent. You never became the trusted friend. You were always a threat, because one of the big things about bringing your child to treatment, which is a terrible threat, of course, is the fact that the therapist will, in fact, steal the child's affections. And the certainty, in many people, preconscious, if not conscious, is that you're a better parent. And go along with your kind of transference that surely you can do a better job than they have done. Look what they have done. You become an enormous threat. And if you can't help parents see what it is that you hope to accomplish in treatment, and that is not just to put the child back on the path of normal development. I mean, no child therapist or adolescent therapist can do more than that. I mean, you can't tell what's going to happen after you're done with treatment. If something horrible happens, the child will end up neurotic. But if you've helped them and the parents get the child back on the pathway of normal development, that's what people always say, that's what we're working on. But what you're really also working on, which to the parent is equally, if not more important, is that you're working on the right, close child-parent relationship for the future. And that is one of your, maybe your prime goal. That they can have a real and gratifying relationship and ongoing with their youngster. So this business of working with parents is extremely important. Much of the work I do that leaves any legacy really is the working with parents, helping them with different developmental issues. There's critical phases in parenting that break down easily. And if you're going to be in the field, you want to be able to help parents with the critical phases. You may never see the children. You may do more good in 3 hours with a set of parents over a particular developmental limit or developmental difficulty, or seeing them for a semester rather than seeing the youngster, than you would have with an ambivalent set of parents trying to treat the youngster once a week or twice a week. And not only that, you have to spend a long time with parents before you ever bring a child into treatment. What I see endlessly is children taken into treatment because people want to treat children, but they don't know where the parents are at, they don't know about the parents' ambivalence, and they don't have a relationship with the parents headed in the same direction with the same goals. Mm-hmm. And they really don't know what the child is being used for in the family. Mm-hmm. We can talk a little more about that. And they don't take into account how the child got there. Did the child get there because the parents thought, my child's in pain. He's missing out on social growth. He's not able to learn. He's obviously embarrassed by wetting his bed. And I know he's crabby, but he's a sad kid. I want him to feel better. Parents don't come like that. They come with, would you fix it, doctor? And they pull it out just as quick. You didn't fix it, doctor. You just made me feel bad. Bye. So if you don't understand where the parents are coming from and whether they really can be empathic and tolerate the fact that a youngster's in pain, you won't get anywhere in the treatment with the child. Sometimes grown-ups take a long time to get there, but there is just no point making a relationship with the child that the parents are going to break right away. In fact, it is malpractice to do it. You should be sure that, in fact, that relationship where you're asking a child to be trusting and work with you on hard feelings, big feelings that get too big, and then having to feel bad for the troubles, that you're going to be there, that you're not as helpless at the whims of the grown-ups as they are, and that you can help them with their regressions and with their sadness and their frustration with their outbursts and so on. So, with those opening lines, I hope you're impressed with parent work as a lifelong ambition if you're going to work with children. There's whole treatises on parent work, of course. I will just go back and see some of the notes, which are myriad. Having worked in a developmental nursery, the issue we spoke of yesterday of object constancy, a little bit today, about loving and hating the same person. We'll just start out advising parents. As I was telling Dr. Nahara, I think that often that juncture in the development of parenthood is a very tough one. I mean, obviously, built into one's ego ideal that we just talked about is how you're going to be the best parent possible. And that's what you can do with the under fives, is tell the parent, my promise is to help you be the best parent possible with what I understand about little ones. It's with that motivation that you can grab parents in and help them with the difficult phases where their children are not yet verbal, not yet subject to reason of any kind, exceedingly ambivalent, often sadistic. I mean, there's nothing like a 2-year-old pulling the wings off of a fly for parents to go into their own mode of fantasy that they have on their hands, a dangerous, terribly sadistic killer here. They're all sadistic to one degree or another. They're all ambivalent. And the fact is, with giving advice to parents, which is what I see, I don't necessarily see the kids. They may come in the office and play with the parent, and we talk about it. Much more is helping a parent realize this is not a moral issue. Don't come down on this as a moral issue. This is an issue of education. In other words, keep your loving tie through your own horror and fury. I mean, there's nothing like a kid falling on the floor and kicking and screaming and calling you whatever names this older brother has provided him with. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. For a mother to feel like, I'm a failure. I'm being tortured. Your toddler runs off, peeks around the corners, driving you crazy, trying to terrorize you. I'm going to run in the street. I'm going to run in the street until you want to grab him. Don't you run in the street. You see the tremendous pull. And I'm talking about different kinds of developmental advice. That's what you'll be doing much of your career if you treat children. It's helping parents with their struggle, with their own difficult, big feelings, hard feelings. You'll find your own mnemonics and cliches to address these things. The troubles inside. How to help your child have the waiting muscles and the cooperating muscles and the muscles to hold those mean feelings. How to give language to things for parents. I'm just talking about some of the wide range of possibilities. And you'll hone your assessment skills, as I said before. Assessing Parents. There's a very good article. It's hard to read. Sorry, Arthur, it's true. Arthur Rosenbaum's article on assessing parents. People that bring their kids in. You know, you need to know how a child is used as a projection in the family. Does this family really want this child to get better, or unconsciously is this child the repository for a very shaky marriage? For protection of another damaged sib, or, you know, some repeat from a parental past, a sib that was abusive or cruel. You need to be able to make those assessments to see if the parents can change course and really be sympathetic with the pain in the child and really work with you. You'll get some clues, but they're not the only clues. You know, how did the child get to you? Because the school would not tolerate him anymore? Or a mother-in-law said, that child needs help. That child really needs help. Or was it their worry about the child? The issue of splitting the case doesn't exist for me anymore. I mean, I will usually see a parent in treatment, the younger the child, the more frequently. I make a point, as do most of my similarly trained colleagues and just observers of what works, is that with little kids, you get them an hour 3 or 4 times a week. The parents are there all the time. They are their experts. They are the experts on their own child, and you better be impressed with that, and you better impress them with your certainty that they are. Or you become a threat. You have to really be very close contact with parents who are very guilty, because sometimes the resolution of the guilt is, you're not doing a good job. A drug, or only the drug, will do better. And they'll have to pull the child. So you have to help them with, look, guilt is not the issue here. You brought the kid for treatment. You're trying to get some help. You know, what you need is some concern, that you want to help him. You see he's in pain, that he got some very good elements early on, and he wants to grow, and he wants, you know, to enjoy his childhood. That's good enough. Now, that's just an attitude. It's very hard to actualize with many parents who are very guilty, very touchy. So you really have to impress parents with your willingness to work with them. Now, later on you may see them a little less frequently, but not necessarily. I remember, and I started on this, one adolescent particularly, who came to me about 14, and had a very anxious mother, very well intended, certain that this youngster could feel better about life and give up some addictions that he had. But she was so anxious that the only way that I thought that I could keep this youngster in treatment was to help her and be available to her. So I took it up with this youngster, John, I'm thinking of seeing your mother every week. To help her back off a little, feel good about the things that you can do. John looked at me and said, "Oh, for God's sakes, please see my mother. She's driving me crazy." He wasn't even worried too much about confidentiality. "Yeah, I know, you're not going to talk with her about what we talk about. I believe you. Please see my mother." And so I did. I had to see her for a couple of years. And I think that she gained a lot from that. And she felt like we were working together. I think she grieved the end of the treatment a whole lot more than her son, who flew off to college and, with real alacrity. But there's all those kinds of judgments to be made about how much you work with parents, how available you are, how you manage the assessment. I think that in the Arthur Rosenbaum paper on assessment, you spend as long as it takes. I mean, there will be many efforts to try to create an emergency. See the child. Every time I've done it, I lose the case. I mean, it just, see the child first. This won't wait. I would say there's really no emergencies in our business. They used to tell me in my child training that school phobia was an emergency. Well, yes and well, no. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to school phobia. There's a lot of aspects to separation anxiety, and teaching parents about what separation anxiety is and the hostility involved in separating and the worry about that. There's not too many emergencies, so you end up taking your time and trying to figure out what's going on with the parents. Now, you may not know that once you take a child into treatment. You're not going to know everything. People get to know you and trust you very gradually. They repress a lot of stuff when they first come into a psychiatrist or psychologist's office. They want to look good. They feel really guilty. They feel like you are going to be the critical parent, that they're rotten parents. So there's a lot you will uncover later after you've taken the child into treatment, but there's not much point in taking a child into treatment until the parents really are prepared to make a relationship with you. That they really have a genuine concern that the child's in pain and could feel better, and that you will work with them as the experts on their child. They are the experts, so that the resumption of the parent-child relationship can be normalized. And you will teach them about transformations, that they're not going to lose anybody. Children transform. They become competent. We celebrate that. We admire it. You teach every parent. First you do it for them. Then you do it with them. Here, I'll put it on. You put the Velcro over on that shoe. Here, you put one block in, I'll put one block in. And then you move on to just standing by and admiring. Wow, you got those snow pants on and those boots on without me. Wow. I mean, every parent has to be taught that sequence, that the transformation does not mean loss. Every skill they hand over, the evolution, the disappointment, all that they go through in adolescence, and the devaluation and the worry that their children will hate them forever rather than only for the moment before they want them to fix the hamburger for them. That all this will result in a transformation. They'll not lose their child. So I'm giving you some bits and pieces about the assessment process and the work you will do ongoing with parents for the rest of your careers. And I don't think this is work that's easily split off. I don't think it's work that necessarily always involves the child. A lot of our work in child analysis is in helping educators and the teachers of the young, in helping parent groups. That's where I spend a fair amount of my time. In helping individuals who want to know, how do I handle this? This has come up and I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe connecting their past, coming to realize that every phase of this child's life stirs up what was going on with them in that phase. Very important, If somebody brings in a 13-year-old by the scruff of the neck, here she is, Doc. What happened to my Shirley Temple? She was a wonderful agency child, did ballet, ice skating, violin, and now she's snotty and hangs out with her girlfriend and giggles to distraction. All of that can be brought in to the parent as What was happening with you at 13? Can you recall? No, I actually can't, Doc. It was such an awful time. I've repressed the whole thing. And begin to help them connect what gets stirred up by their children. Because every developmental phase is a suck backwards for a grown-up. And you have to be in tune. You don't see a mother connecting to a tiny kid, a year-old kid, or a 6-month-old baby, or that 18-month-old toddler without a fair amount of regression. You know, you'll hear mothers of those tiny ones saying, you know, by the end of the day, I feel like a 2-year-old. I would like an adult conversation. Just 5 minutes and I'll be all right again. But that regression, that pull is in fact in every phase of development, although the regression in the first year and a half or two is profound and observable. Obstetricians know about it. You know, pediatricians know about it. So here, you know, give you a little list, and we'll talk about your various issues with parents. Of all the things that you get asked, and it's a lot. And in fact, it's better that I don't have it because it is so long. The kinds of things that one ends up with parents, in fact, taking up the kinds of things they ask about. How do you teach a child about missing feelings? How do you teach a child anticipation? And when do you tell them when they're going to the doctor for a shot? At what age? How do you deal with preparation for absences of parents? Depending on it's 1, or the child's 3, or the child's 5. What difference does it make? Why is it bad not to tell children what they're getting into with a doctor's visit, or that dad is going to leave for 3 weeks until... Oh, we're going to the airport and Daddy's leaving for 3 weeks. What does 3 weeks mean to a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old? How do you teach these things? How do you think about them? You want to be able to have those skills. How do you deal with sleep disorders? How do you explain to parents why it's not a good idea to have your kids in bed with you? And then they tell you, but my whole culture has the children in bed with us. Then what do you say? Why do you teach parents why spanking doesn't work? You know, you need to know what you're going to say, and you need to have great respect for parental culture. I mean, you don't want to rattle a system of confident, capable parents that have their cultural differences with you. But you need to be able to explain, well, there's another way to think about this. I mean, I'm often impressed that children have an easier time with parents who act like they know what they're doing because that's what they were taught, than parents who are ambivalent and switch how you deal with discipline. By the way, discipline. How do you think about discipline? How do you teach it to parents? They want to know, how should I punish the kid? Should I punish the kid? Should I never punish the kid? There's a lot of questions that you need to be able to address with parents. How do you shore up parents of adolescents in treatment that have to say no? How do you help them bear? Yeah, they're going to hate you. They're going to press and press and press. They want to see if you mean it. And they really need to see that you mean it. Because that's the contents of the ego ideal. You stand by what you believe. And I like the old redneck position almost better than, well, honey, really, maybe you shouldn't be taking the car out after 11 p.m. and drinking. You better not do that or you won't have a car to drive for 6 months. I'm almost better with that stance. So this long list of things that you need to be able to address with sympathy to find out what happened in each phase of development of the adolescent. To not take a kid into treatment until the parents really are with you and ready to work with you. They have the courage to set out the parameters for treatment, what it costs, how often, how will they get there, is that really feasible? To be able to say this is important and stand by it yourself, to make sure that when a child makes a relationship with an extra parental adult, that you're not just another helpless one in the family. Those are some of my first thoughts in teaching a parent course. There's a lot to learn about the parent work. But I'll stop there and see what people can generate in the way of ideas. And I will email some of the reading lists or fax them so that you have some of the parent work issues.
Taking adolescents into treatment who don't want to go to treatment and working with parents over the phone initially who are vacillating around the question of, I'm going to lay the law down and say you have to go to treatment, whether you like it or not, versus if you're going to become part of the treatment, it's going to be because of a choice of yours, and then they never get into treatment. Any thoughts about that? Mike?
Yeah, you got to watch that one, and it's an interesting one. And that sometimes, and it's very subtle, and there's no immediate reaction you can make to it, but you need to know it. But frequently, that's the parent's message to the kid. I don't want you to make a relationship with this grown-up. And it's quite subtle. I'll have fathers calling, well, he's just not going to come. He's just not going to come. And then I think I better take this up with the father because, if the father said, get in the car, we're going, funniest thing, the kid gets in the car and they come. They might stand on the threshold of my consulting room for a few sessions. Up yours, up yours, up yours. But they get better. And eventually they make a relationship with me. But the parental problem with the child doesn't want to come is probably a parental problem. I've rarely spent more than a session or two with a youngster, say an elementary school age youngster, where complaints about, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, don't dissipate in a session or two because they speak to the fact that he's making me side with the policeman inside, and his policeman doesn't work right, and I'm not on his policeman's side right now. I want him to feel better, and I can show him how. Usually he abandons me as a noxious substance that's going to side with a rigid, uncompromising conscience, which makes him rebellious and obnoxious. As soon as he sees I'm not going to do that, he might carp a little at home. Not much. He still comes. We develop a relationship. So a lot of this is the message from the parent and the preparatory work that's gone before. How, one of the things about assessing parents for their readiness to support a treatment is how would they explain to their child the need to go see me? What are you going to say to Johnny about why you're taking, oh, well, I think what we should do, Dr. Austad, is just tell him you're a special kind of teacher. They're not ready to bring their child to treatment yet. I am not a special kind of teacher. I'm a feelings doctor. I can hardly say I'm a worry doctor anymore. There's not a 9-year-old in the world that doesn't look me right in the eye and say, I haven't got any worries. It's hard to look me in the eye and say I haven't got any feelings. But if they're still feeling really bad that they're bringing a child for help with big inside troubles, they're not ready to introduce it to their child and to support treatment and to give the message, this person is going to help us all sort this out so that you feel better. I don't feel bad. Well, as Dr. Austad puts it, get everybody else to feel bad and make you feel bad about yourself. So you must feel bad somewhere. Find out about it. Dr. Austad can help. She deals with big feelings and troubles. If a parent isn't ready to explain that to their youngster and has to slide them in with, oh, this is kind of a teacher will teach you about having happy feelings, they're not ready yet to support treatment. It doesn't answer your question entirely, but I've never seen a youngster or a young adolescent, which is the problem, after that to come because they want help, who isn't watching the cues from their parents.
Yeah, it's for me in the case I'm thinking of particularly obvious with adolescents, where I'm not going to go to treatment becomes very much an issue, and the parents resolve to say, you're going to treatment, get in the car, and not get into a really kind of noxious battle with them, but to just in their own mind be resolved. Treatment's important, get in the car, let's go.
You need to sort this out, son, and we can't just do it as parents. We can just be parents.
Yeah.
And we need a pro. You ask her what, or you ask him why. It'll help. I mean, they need to have that kind of certainty, or the kid can't afford to go. It's too submissive.
Frequently then when you have to use a conflict between the child and the parents for control,
you can get into,
or for a variety of different reasons, he's going to fight whatever the parents say and so on. And so you have to, as you say, you have to get a feeling for what is going on, because sometimes when he says he doesn't want to come, if he appears once and you can talk to him, you can change that around very quickly. If you understand what is the I don't want to come, or I don't need this, for. You refer to something which I always found of enormous interest. I always call it the family symptom child. And there are some children, and it's not that uncommon, that really the family has concentrated the pathology on the family on this child, and they give the role of being the disturbed, sick, abnormal, helpless one, so that everybody is not looking at the problems in the family. It's the child that they are concentrating on. And in London, we had a project in Anna Freud's clinic that was called where we got the parents and the children, all of them in analysis. So the father was in analysis, the mother was in analysis, children were in analysis, different people. And there was somebody that was a coordinator. So every one of these people reported to the coordinator. The coordinator didn't pass that information to anybody. Each one of these treatments was an individual treatment. I was a coordinator of some of these things. And it was very interesting because you could see how the parents would use these children for what purposes. And sometimes it was really very worrisome because the psychopathology of the family was so extensive. And somehow they have managed to make that child the symptom of the family. And somehow this child, for whatever reason, has accepted the role. In fact, played like an actor. He was not playing it. He was suffering.
That's
from
his
all of this,
identity.
you know. But it was interesting because you say, it's as if he accepted this role and he's playing it for all its value, And other times they were less complex, but still very significant. I remember particularly one couple that were having problems, sexual problems. The wife was very reluctant to be involved sexually with the husband, which of course was very disappointing and were constantly looking for her. And the way that was solved, they had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They both became insomniacs. They couldn't sleep in the evening. The slightest thing will they wake these children up, and it made it impossible because the father was bugging this woman, trying to, get into a relationship with her. And these children were so well instructed. How that was done, I don't know. But I can tell you that they will wake up and go to the parental bedroom immediately. And it became clear, that was kind of
transmitted, but how? Right,
the
it's
question of how
transmitted.
was very, very interesting. And there were things like that. That was more focused because it was a particular problem. And that wasn't so bad because you could deal with that. But even sometimes the question with the children is, the family symptom children, is are they of an age where they are able to, through the relationship to the therapist, put some distance between them and their parents? Can they, through the relationship to you, and the cognitive level of development that they have reached, see what they are being used for? And if they can, doesn't matter, you may be able to help the child out of that predicament,
Even if the parents don't change.
Absolutely no.
In
But then it
adolescence.
creates a problem for
Right.
the family because the family then gets into a lot of trouble. What you do is you displace the problem from the child to where it belongs. And but it's not easy to do because, of course, frequently these people will remove the child the moment they see
The child may ride his bike to see you. He'll stop writing the
Yeah,
checks.
yeah. Now, with some people, it's what Carl was saying. They, are well-meaning enough. They are no malicious. They have a problem like any other human being. But if you work with them and you alert them to what may be happening and how that may be affecting the child's, behavior, many parents will say, what I'm doing, let's look at that, maybe. And then they, it's not, but you need the relationship that you need to build, that Jesus describing. Because then you can say, maybe you need to go and see somebody and deal with that problem so that you don't have to use the child to deal with it, And that was not uncommon. That was not uncommon. And I know some very dramatic examples of that to this day are playing that role and have never abandoned it, and they have screwed their lives royally, and don't seem to be able to give it up because part of the problem is that some of these things become structural. In this sense, they develop a masochistic character structure, and then they have a need to recreate this terrible situation in which they develop this initial pathology. It becomes part of the character structure and the personality, and that may be pretty difficult to deal with. It may be very difficult to solve that once it gets to that point,
Yeah, I think the psychology of the victim and the masochism involved and the tremendous sadistic underpinnings.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you to kick me. I gotcha. I mean, that is really hard to treat. You started in adolescence and you're treating it for years and watching them work through different object choices for their victim and gradually taking responsibility for the pleasure and victimhood. It's a really tough treatment problem. But it comes of being misidentified often. as a different member from the parents' families, and therefore accepting that role.
Yeah, it is really interesting because though obviously this component instinct comes in pair, whoever has a masochistic character structure, that's the one that is more workable, more functional given the situation of the person, but behind that there is the sadism. And it's interesting because they may then behave towards other people in an extraordinarily sadistic manner, you know, which makes it impossible to have a relationship with anyone. You know. They kind of behave in ways that they destroy any kind of relationship that they can have, and that may be fulfilling and so on. They ain't always by severity.
But they still internally stay the victim. They're
They still are the
convinced they're
victim. They don't see what they are doing at all. And that again is extraordinarily difficult to deal with. But
we're not taking up too much of, you know, that particular drive element from the anal phase, but the work with toddlers is what I keep stressing is the most central intervention I've seen as far as in a short time making a huge difference, is helping parents with their own sadism and the ambivalent stage of toddlerhood, where toddlers are overwhelmed with their own ambivalence and loving and hating and wanting to torture and control, and that is where it starts.
Well, does that mean that working with that dynamic, even with patients who are not toddlers or parents of patients who are not toddlers, you know, where the issues still are the need to see things in black and white terms, or you know, where they haven't been able to feel okay about being good and bad, and seeing their children as good and bad, and where with all patients, some work is going to be happening around that dynamic.
We're assuming yes.
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. Some work is always working around that dynamic. There's no question.
you know, actually, when we do the lecture on divorce, you see this a lot in the children of divorce, actually, in certain circumstances. And it is very interesting and practically a very devastating situation, because they identify with both parents, and then in their later life they translate that into the relationships to whoever they relate to. And in a way they are the avengers. Let's say that the father and the mother have difficulty, but we talk about divorce, but the reality of it that there are a large number of marital conflicts that don't end in divorce, should probably have ended in divorce, but they don't, for a variety of different reasons. And of course, many situations that end in divorce because of the things that are happening between the parents in a variety of different ways. But some of these kids identify, for example, with the mother that may have been, I don't know, whatever, abused, abandoned, you know. And so in a sense, they develop the same masochistic character structure that they thought that you had to have in order to tolerate that situation, yeah? But then when they move out of that situation, they become both the father that is abusive to the other person, because they have an identification with the father, which they are totally unaware of it, but you see it in the relationship. And so at times, they become whatever happens, they provoke the partners into being sadistic to them, because they need to feed the masochistic monster, you know, to justify themselves. And of course they can do no better than the parents. So they constantly recreate the situation. They cannot get themselves out of it, because the guilt of having a normal life or a satisfactory relationship is impossible for these people. But then what is interesting is that they say many of them, of course, never really establish a solid permanent relationship. They move from this to that and the other, and they end for a variety of different reasons. But even those that do end by destroying it, because at some point they provoke the partner, which may not respond. But that doesn't matter, because they then become sadistic to the partner. We're engaged in behavior that will destroy the relationship anyhow. And you say, how do you deal with this? Because it's what, I don't know if you remember when Gansarain was here and was talking of the biologic of Montebranco. You remember the contact transference phenomena? And overlapping, there are no boundaries between these two types of identification and this sadomasochistic structure, which is constantly reenacted. You know?
And shifting from the kick me to I'll get you going so you'll kick me, and around and around.
They can take so much at some point that can't be any more, they will have to destroy it, and they do. It's really shocking. And it's common, it's really so. But when we do the divorce thing, I will talk a little more about it and have some examples of it and things like that.
You were going to say?
Yeah, earlier you alluded to adolescence being basically a Western phenomena, and which I think is pretty interesting, and certainly it's something, a topic in and of itself. But one of the things I was wondering, looking at the picture of treating parents more globally, is that I can think of a lot of cultures and subcultures where parental beliefs in like demon spirits and other cultural taboos really make it difficult for a child to have treatment or the child to be treated. And since America is becoming even more of a multicultural society, I'm sure that we're going to see more of these people, of these kids, both court-ordered and non-court-ordered. So my question is, have you run into this kind of mentality, and how in the world do you deal with it?
Yeah, that was just my, 12-second reference to, you don't want to shake up a system that works. It may not be your system, and you may in fact have to find a way that's culturally acceptable to be able to say, for example, for this little one, not in bed with you. He gets too excited, they're all sexy beasts, and this one should not be in bed with you. He's now 10 years old. Get him out of bed. But you're trying to deal with a cultural issue. You're going to have to think constantly about what went on in that culture, what's acceptable, how do you make them feel good, like good parents, and how do you deal with the realities of what a child can manage and integrate. And the child, they can have some sympathy. Mm-hmm. Different cultures, the parents from different cultures your child isn't facing what you face. He's got you in this wonderful background, be it Asiatic or European or African or whatever, but he also has to face the American schools, and they're a particular challenge. Let's see how we can make him as flexible and, as adaptable as possible, because he's a very bright kid. He's got a good brain. You've done a good job, folks. Mm-hmm. There's a very difficult cultural handling that I think people that like to do it do very well. Mm-hmm. And it takes some knowledge. You can't get yourself there, it's easy. It's not easy. Right. It takes some sensitivity.
The reason I ask is because I've run into people for whom mental health problems and adaptation problems are a sign of not bad character, but some influence, outside metaphysical influence, and that's always, I think, it only casts an onus on the kid because it's predicated on the idea that you're bad. That you're bad, and you're not just a person who's doing bad things. There's a larger force at work.
It's kind of the first step that kids go through is that the devil made me do it.
Right, exactly.
You know, the 5.5-year-old,
Mhm.
you made me spill my milk.
Mhm.
The devil made me do it. And it's fun sometimes if you can work with those kids. The grown-ups kind of trust you as a different kind of guru. The kids get it. The kids like to talk about it. You know, come on now. I don't care whose demons are what. You're still going to have to decide when you can take responsibility
Okay.
for your own homework and stuff.
Mhm.
But first of all, you have to get to be a trusted sort of guru in that cultural milieu. It's not easy to get in. It takes real sophistication. You have to have a certain adolescent creativity to want to even try. Support parents there and children.
One suggestion, you know, I think I told you this before, but I could repeat myself. I think you should make a book out of all of this. You really have the data, you know, even if we type some of the lectures, which can be done, transcribed into typing, and then you can expand it, because obviously, as you say, in an hour you cover so much. Let's say today is the adolescent, there is a lot of other things that you have not included because of the limitations of time, but you could then add that. And it should have that chapter of how to work with the parents and so on, and it'd be a terrific contribution. I have been trying to get the center into the business of publishing something, books. And we had earlier a series on Alzheimer's disorder by somebody that works at the university that I thought gave very good lectures on that subject. And she got very excited with the idea, but it's never got down to work on putting it down in white and black in papers, you know. Didn't write it in paper, so we never got anywhere. So I still see her, oh yeah, she's very excited about it, she never does.
I know. Part of it is the humility of it. You realize that there's so much to know. Nothing you say is just right. You know, I often have to say that to my students. It's hard to say on tape. It's don't quote me, because somebody will say that's wrong. But sometimes in trying to be a teacher, you have to condense things. You have to make them. You have to meet the student where they're at, and so it makes everybody reluctant to write it down.
But you see, I think it's really important. You should. I know it's a burden, but on the other hand, you obviously have a unique ability to do this and had unique experiences and can communicate them to other people in a language that is meaningful and that people can follow, and it will be a tremendous contribution, you know. And again, going back to earlier times, I used to tell Anna Freud, you shouldn't be working, you should be writing of your experiences. And she said to me, I have to make a living. I said, but, which, you know, it was true. She was very independent and she wanted to be self-sufficient that way. But I always thought, yeah, it's big. Why not get a grant for this woman to sit on her, you know, desk and write experiences, for God's sake? But I don't think she would have been totally comfortable with that, you know. Though she wrote an enormous amount, you know, she was a writer. So it's not that she was not a profuse writer, but she has so much knowledge. You see, now it's gone. She didn't put a tenth of what she knew in book form, you know, which I think is such an enormous loss. I mean, it's a unique experience. So you need to do that. Okay, thank you much.